It's amazing. I was going to do a 40-minute episode. We're going hour 20, baby. Let's keep this train rolling. It's a fun conversation. I love this type of stuff. Being a business owner, like it's a dream job right here, man. You kidding me? To be able to work the numbers for a professional football team would be absolutely awesome. All right, wide receiver room under contract next year. Christian Watson, Jayden Reed, Romeo Doubs, Dontavion Wicks, Malik Heath. Bo Melton is an exclusive rights free agent, right? So let me make a note here real quick. I apologize for the delay. I just want to make sure I put this down here, roster building, so we have some notes so I can be accurate in the description on the podcast there. I hate it. I know I've said this before on the pod. I can't stand it when people put a podcast out, they put a title and make you think, all right, they're going to be having a long, drawn-out conversation on this topic. They talk about their favorite pizza and what they did on their vacation for 40 minutes and give you 5 minutes of the topic they said was in the podcast. That stuff drives me crazy. So, Bo Melton, exclusive rights free agent. Obviously, you'll get him back if you want him back. Let me just give you a quick summary. The entire wide receiver room is coming back, right? That's what it comes down to. Unless you decide that one of these guys that are going to be free agents, Christian Watson or Romeo Doubs, unless you decide, hey, let's trade one of those guys and get some draft compensation because we're not going to re-sign them. I can't imagine they're going to re-sign both. I could be wrong, but both are going to want good money. If I had to guess right now, this is me personally, I would think Christian Watson is going to be the one they choose. He's now healthy. He is more effective in the running game at blocking. Hands down, he's a better run blocker than Romeo Doubs. He obviously has the higher upside with the athletic ability, the frame, the build, all that stuff. In no way, shape, or form am I trying to dog Romeo Doubs. I'm not trying to do that. Dude's probably got the best hands on the team, to be honest with you. He's probably the second best route runner on the team. And both those things are very important, especially for a boundary X receiver. Although if Matt is wanting to stretch the field with the boundary X, which you did see Christian Watson, if I remember correctly, on the go ball, I believe Watson, I don't know, I had to go check the tape. I was going to say, I think he was playing X, but he might have been playing Z. Regardless, Watson on the outside makes that safety have to cover sideline to side. Like he has to cover all the way to the sideline for that deep ball, like you've seen Jordan throw there on Thanksgiving night. Romeo Doubs gives you that same deep ball, but not as much a threat of getting over the top. The back shoulder aspect is there, right? That's the tough one. So that's my question in here to you guys right now. And I'm going to try to get back to the chat and see what you guys say. Which of those two receivers, you can only keep one? Who are you keeping? Christian Watson or Romeo Doubs? And I listen, chances are they're both going to be on the roster next year, right? But who would you choose? Who would you choose between Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs? And just put their name, and I'll know, all right, that's your choice in there. Rather than, don't worry about an explanation. Just give me the name. Again, that's the wide receiver room. We're sitting in a really good spot, guys. Got one of, if not the cheapest wide receiver rooms in the league, and it's going to stay that way moving forward. Let's go to the chat. Let's see. Jen Wright says Watson all day. Andre says Watson. Donald Krieger says Watson. Brambo says Watson. Reef says Doubs. All right, Reef, got you, buddy. Drew D says Watson. Holmes, I like the way you answered. If forced, we're forcing you for sure. Keep Watson. So his is Watson. Jameis in the chat. Good to see you, buddy. He says Doubs. All right. He's going with Doubs. I rock. Keep Christian Doubs. All right. I guess he's saying both. All right. Anthony says Watson. So it seems like Watson's running away with it. We're on the same page there. For me, it would definitely be Christian Watson. And again, I don't think Romeo's a bad player. And that's why I was saying, like, if you go to them both early and try to get ahead of it and offer a very, very team-friendly contract to both, if one of them or both of them accept it, you could pay wide receiver one money for two players, right? And then in a couple of years, you got to reset for the Jayden Reed extension when that comes into play, right? Because I know we want to extend Jayden Reed. And you still got a couple of years before you have to decide on Dontavion Wicks. That's why I was saying, like, what if you went to both Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs and offered them $8 million per, guarantee a good chunk of it, right? Because the Packers love to pay cash, and you could structure it in a way where you can get out of the contract in a couple of years. But that way you get them both back under contract. I don't think they'll do that because that is not the precedent that Goody set. But again, I think it's interesting to think about that. Would they do that, right? Drew D in the chat, Dobbs got a little risky since the personal issues that took place. I agree, Drew, and I don't think they were as bad as maybe some of the media painted it out to be, but there was definitely something there, right? He would not have gotten suspended if it was just a, hey, man, I had a complete breakdown here, and sorry I missed, apologize to the team. From what I understand, and I shouldn't even comment because he may have done it and we not know about it. I don't even know if he really apologized to the team. Those players probably don't even care if he apologizes, to be honest with you. But you're right, man. There's nothing there. Let me put it this way. Remove the names. We had to suspend one of them for a game, and the other one's our best run blocker and most unselfish receiver on the team. Probably going with the better run blocker in Christian Watson, So it is what it is. Jen Wright says, to keep the team together, they might work with the team. That's they got a lot of camaraderie there, right? Christian Watson and Romeo Dobbs came in the league together. They absolutely adore each other. I could see that being the case. Might take a little less money, right? Could be. Brambo, Christian is an elite talent and blocks his ass off. Amen, man. That's the perfect description there. All right. So let's move along here. Tight end. With the tight end room, Luke Musgrave, Tucker Kraft, and Ben Sims all under contract next year. And actually, in 2026, Ben Sims is a restricted free agent. So you got rights to him. John Fitzpatrick. To me, John Fitzpatrick's kind of shown a little bit. You guys remember the goal line block that we showed on Chalk Talk last week where he knocked a DB? I mean, he hit a DB in the next week, smacked him right in the mouth. He's under contract next year. So you've got your top 4 tight ends here that are pretty much protected. Now, whether you like Luke Musgrave or not doesn't matter. He's going to be on the roster for at least 2 more years, possibly 3, right? I know he's had injury concerns. He may come back and end up being the better tight end, but right now, boys, tight end is a dog in Tucker Kraft. I mean, how long has it been since we had a tight end that you can go, man, that's a true Y. He'll smack somebody in the mouth in a running game and then, receive for 60 yards. Who was the last tight end we had that was like that? People may immediately think Jermichael Finley. Jermichael Finley never blocked like Tucker Kraft, right? Like this is a traditional Y. Finley was kind of that hybrid, that flex guy, right? Yeah, pretty cool, man. Pretty cool to see where we're at there. Let's see, Joyce. Where did Fitzpatrick come from? It's a great question. I know he was I want to say being 24 years old, he was an undrafted free agent, but just came out of nowhere. When we signed him, I'm going, okay, this guy will probably be off the roster in a couple of weeks. And next thing you know, he's blocking at the goal line and making plays. So, yeah. IROC says we haven't ever, man. You'd have to think back to like Chewy. IROC, that's probably before your time, man. You look kind of young in your picture there. I wasn't a Packer fan in the 90s. Like I said, me and my brother, we rooted for the Steelers. And I got my first taste of NFL football rooting for the Steelers back then. But everyone compares him to Chewy. Probably was Chewy the last time we had him. So, Jen Wright, love my yak and cheese. Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. So the tight end room looks like it's pretty well set, right? Offensive line, we kind of hit on Josh Myers already, but under contract, Elton Jenkins, Jordan Morgan, Sean Ryan, Zach Tom, Rasheed Walker, Jacob Monk, Travis Glover, and Kadeem Telford is a exclusive rights free agent. So essentially what you've got there is you're looking to build an offensive line of somewhere between 8 to 10 guys. So under contract, you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 if you keep Kadeem Telford. So you got pretty much 2 roster spots there. And again, they may keep 11 or 12. They might only keep 9. Who knows? But you're looking at 2 or 3 roster spots there. So Josh Myers is going to be a free agent. Andre Diller's going to be a free agent. I let Andre Diller walk unless it's a minimum contract. That's just me. Donovan Jennings, I think he's on the practice squad. Yeah, so he will be reset and back on the roster unless somebody signs him. No doubt about that. So offensive line, 2 open spots unless you bring Josh Myers back. I kind of like Drew's approach. Let's look to upgrade it. If you can't upgrade it, bring Josh back for a somewhat cheap deal. But again, if he hits the open market and it runs wild, what are you going to do, right? What are you going to do? You just got to go get your replacement. Now, let's back up a second. It was reported last offseason that someone in the front office said that their center of the future is already in the building. Now, that could have been Myers. I don't think that's what they meant. I think they meant either Jordan Morgan, Elgton Jenkins, or Jacob Monk is what I'm thinking. So if that's the case, you let Myers walk. I think you'll pick up if Drew's still in here. Drew, you're usually pretty good about this, or anybody in the chat if you know the answer. If Josh Myers walks, there's a comp pick, right? Like anybody who goes in this unrestricted free agency that gets a certain amount of salary, right? A certain percentage of the cap, you end up getting comp picks back. So there will be compensation involved there with like Josh Myers. So if I can get a quick answer on that in the chat, anyone who knows for sure, right? I'm not 100% sure, but yeah, here's Drew. Drew's my cap guy, man. Yes, as long as we don't sign someone to cancel him out. Got it. So is it just that it's just that position, right? I imagine that's what you mean by cancel him out. Now I'm interviewing Drew in here on the show, keeping him busy. So if you don't go sign a center, right, and that center is on the roster like was reported this last offseason, then you'll get a comp pick back. You've already got your center of the future, and then you go and draft players. So you would get draft compensation for Myers. It might be a 7th-round pick. It might be a 6th-round pick. Here's Drew. Every unrestricted free agent you sign takes away a comp pick for an unrestricted free agent you lost. There you go. So anybody we sign in free agency, you've basically got to show that you lost more in free agency than you gained, and it's not position specific. That makes sense. Cool. So you potentially got, by letting Myers walk, you potentially get a comp pick, right? Depending on how aggressive you are in free agency. So as far as the offensive line goes there, let's say Josh Myers doesn't return. If Josh Myers doesn't return and you kick Elgton Jenkins to center, right, what you would see is Jordan Morgan or Sean Ryan going to guard, right, to left guard. Let's just say it's let's start left to right. It'd be Rasheed Walker left tackle. It'd be Jordan Morgan left guard. Elgton Jenkins at center. Sean Ryan at right guard. And Zach Tom at right tackle. I'm okay with that offensive line. I don't know about y'all. But I've seen enough from Jordan Morgan and Sean Ryan, if Jordan Morgan can stay healthy, that I'm okay with that. You know what I'm saying? Like, why overpay for Josh Myers when we know Elgton Jenkins can play center and play it at a high level? You know, obviously going to need some reps to get brushed up. He hasn't played center consistently since he was in college, right? I kind of like that approach. Yeah, Donald in the chat, you get it. I didn't want to talk about it, Donald. He says Zach Thomas so cheap, $1.2 million. Don't get used to that, boys. That's about the blimp. That's about the blimp up to it's gonna exceed Elgton Jenkins' number of 17.6 or 14.4 at least. What they'll probably do is structure it in a way where you tack on a avoidable year or two. We might luck up and keep it, you know, somewhere between 10 and 13 million, but it'll probably exceed 14 million, I would imagine. Like you see the structure of Elgton Jenkins' number, 14.4, right? And then it goes to, let me get my cursor back up here, 14.4, and then it goes to 17.6, and then look how it, bang, jumps up to 24.8, how they structured that. And the guaranteed money is paid somewhat up front, so if for some reason you don't want to keep Elgton in 2026, you cut bait, you're probably going to save money there. I don't want to click off this screen and screw everything up that we got going on, but that's how that would work. So, yeah, he is so cheap, man. No doubt about it. He's and here's the thing, IROC says he's going to be expensive next year. I don't think he'll be expensive next year, IROC. Let me explain what I mean. And this is just based off precedent and how the Packers typically operate. Zach Tom is sitting at $1.1 million this year, and next year it's $1.2 million. If he signs a deal, that new deal won't come into place until 2026 unless the Packers want to front load that contract and spread some of that cap over into 2025. Now, they may do that. What I'm getting at is in 2025, don't expect Zach Tom's number to look anything like Elgton Jenkins' $14 million. It'll be much cheaper, but it will probably get inflated a touch. The big cap hits are going to start in 2026, 2027, that type of thing. But again, I'm okay with paying great. You can overpay for great all day long. Zach Tom is a great tackle. I mean, that dude is a monster, man. And he can play anywhere. Here's the other thing, too. You get into a bond where Elgton Jenkins, think about this. Elgton Jenkins is your center, right? And let's say Jacob Monk doesn't work out. He doesn't turn into the player that we think he can be. Elgton Jenkins is your center. He gets hurt. Zach Tom has value in coming over and playing center. Zach Tom is probably, and I'm not trying to dog Elgton, Zach Tom is probably a better center than Elgton Jenkins is. Think about that. but it's just so valuable having him at right tackle, right? Yeah. It's interesting, man. I love these type of conversations, though. These are a lot of fun. Andre says, let Monk play center and keep Jenkins at guard. There you go. Hey, that might be the plan, Andres, right? That might be the plan. And if Jacob Monk can do that, I'm all about it. You kidding me? With that look, it would be left tackle Rasheed Walker, right? Left guard Elton Jenkins, Jacob Monk at center, right guard. You'll continue that competition between Sean Ryan and Jordan Morgan, and you got some flexibility as well as depth there. And then, of course, Zach Tom at right tackle. So, and here's the other thing, guys. Yeah, there you go, Jen. Good point. Sean Ryan can play center too. Yeah, matter of fact, he filled in at center at some point, right? It seemed like he did. So, with that being said, you're still going to be looking for 2 or 3 offensive linemen this offseason. What if Goody goes out? Think about this. In the same draft, Goody hit, and I hope I get the names right. In the same draft, he hit on Zach Tom, was it the 4th, I think? 4th or 5th, Rasheed Walker in the 7th, and some people were calling Sean Ryan a hit now a 3rd-round pick. So you got 3 good – you got 1 great offensive lineman, right? You got another I would say good left tackle in Rasheed Walker, and you got what some people were saying are above average to good guard and Sean Ryan in the same draft. So when you go out and you draft 2 or 3 more offensive linemen, you're probably going to find a replacement for 1 or 2 of these guys that we're considering as starters right now in the next draft. Goody crushes it in the draft. So, very, very interesting. Very interesting. Coach Lynn in the chat says, keep Myers unless Ryan or Monk can play center. I get that's kind of where we're at too, man. Here we go. Zach Tom was a 4th rounder. I always get them mixed up. So 4th rounder for Zach Tom. If Goody goes out and finds another Zach Tom outside of the first 3 rounds, now, this is where we got to be realistic for a second. Zach Tom was an absolute stud of a hit, right? A draft pick in the 4th round. Do not convince yourself that Goody had a higher grade on Zach Tom than he did Sean Ryan. I think they were in the same draft, right, guys? Let me look at the contract. Yeah. So, as fans, we go, oh, yeah, man, Goody knew that Zach Tom, and I'm not saying Drew's saying this or anyone else is specific. I'm just saying as a fan base, we do this sometimes. Goody didn't go, man, Zach Tom is way better than Sean Ryan, but Sean Ryan ain't going to be there and Zach Tom will, right? Typically, in today's NFL, you would have drafted Zach Tom in the 3rd round if you thought he had a higher grade than Sean Ryan. And it just so happens Zach Tom developed quicker, right? Coaches did could be the coaches did a better job of Zach. I doubt that. I think it's just Zach had a higher upside. There's no 2 ways about it. And the thing that stood out about Zach Tom to me is, first of all, Ryan Schlipp nailed it. The whole draft process, he kept coming back to Zach Tom. Zach Tom was his guy. He absolutely nailed that. And then the thing that sticks out to me is, I think he had pretty good PFF grades, if I remember correctly, in college, but also the versatility. That's something that the Packers covet. So when you get ready for the draft this year, look for those later round guys that can play multiple positions, right? Probably a tip there. So let's see here. Daryl in the chat. Jacob Monks is 6'2", 6'2", I think it's 6'2" and 3 inches, about 308-ish. He can pass pro and do a little run block as well. I think it was Drew that talked about his lateral quickness too. Yeah, right here. Drew said Monk has lateral movement, in my opinion, so that's fantastic for the center position to be able to slide over right and help with those double team blocks when these teams come out and they like to, vacate the A gap completely and make that center kind of sit on an island. We like to approach it a little bit different. We like to mug the A gap and drop those guys out and keep the center there on an island, not blocking anybody. So got to have that lateral movement. Completely agree with that, man. Donald in the chat said, wasn't Walker really highly prospected until he had a major injury? I can't remember what it was. Drew probably knows the answer to that. I don't know if it was personal issues or what, but it did seem like Rasheed Walker was a little highly coveted until we got to the draft, and he kind of dropped for whatever reason. So we'll see. See what Drew comes up with there. Drew probably knows the answer to that question. He follows the draft really, really closely. So, all right. And we'll be looking for that if Drew has the answer. But until then, let's slide down and look at the defensive line. We'll go rapid fire now because we want to try to cover every position before we wrap this show up. If you guys would, take a quick second, hit that like button. Feel free to sub to the channel. We appreciate y'all making us a part of your morning here as we're just diving into some futures contract stuff. Tonight we'll be doing Chalk Talk, breaking down the top 15 plays on the Telestrator from the huge Thanksgiving win over the Dolphins. And then tomorrow we'll jump right into prepping for the Detroit Lions. What's their last 3-game saturation look like? What are they doing well? Where are they ranking as a team? We'll give you all the injury updates as they're extremely banged up. Will we be getting Jair back? Will Edgerrin Cooper have a chance to play? All those things that we want to talk about as we move along in the week. Thank y'all for, like I said, making us a part of your morning here. Defensive line, Kenny Clark, Rashawn Gary. Keep in mind, guys, it's got the edges and the tackles together. I like to separate them personally. I like to look at it like, all right, here's the defensive lineman and then the edge defenders. Because, I mean, you see, we're running a little bit of a hybrid defense this year. As much as we're dropping the defensive ends out, they might as well be a 34 edge, right? So there is a big difference between a defensive tackle and an edge defender as opposed to just a true defensive end that's only going to rush the quarterback. So I wish they had done an edge, but what we'll do is anything that says DE, we'll just treat it as an edge defender. But let's focus on the interior defensive lineman for a minute. Kenny Clark, under contract, right? Devontae Wyatt, he's under contract next year. TJ Slaton is set to be an unrestricted free agent, okay? Sucks. I think TJ's a pretty damn good ball player. Matter of fact, the Quay Walker sack that we're going to break down on Chalk Talk tonight, TJ Slaton completely disrupted the entire freaking play. It was, don't get me wrong, Quay, great play by Quay too on the Green Dog Blitz. But TJ, man, he ran right through the freaking guard, I think it was. Kobe Wooden, he's under contract. Kingsley Enagbare, that's an edge. Carl Brooks is under contract. And that is it. So let's count it off here. Defensive tackles, all right? Defensive tackles alone. We've got 1, 2, 3, only 3 returning. Now, how many defensive tackles should you carry? Most of the time, you're going to be in a nickel 4-2-5, right? And there's some cases that you'll run a little bit of a NASCAR package. So you definitely need 2, and you need 2 backups, right? So I think you need 4 at a minimum on your roster in terms of defensive tackles. So if TJ Slaton walks in free agency, your defensive tackles are Kenny Clark, Devontae Wyatt, and Carl Brooks. You got room for 1 more. I'm not completely sold on Devontae Wyatt. I don't know how you guys feel. I feel like we need to draft his replacement. And then if he pops and we extend him, you're looking to get out of Kenny's contract in 2026 where that cap hit jumps to a $31.6 million, right? You guys know I've been pretty vocal about this Kenny Clark contract. All last offseason, I thought, don't re-sign him, let him play it out, see what he does this year. Well, they went and extended him. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I know more than the front office. I'm not. But, man, it's tough. So let's see. Holmes said, I would pay Slaton. He's our best nose tackle. I'll tell you, man, he's played pretty damn well this year, in my opinion. PFF doesn't agree, but you look at pressure percentage and what he's done in the passing game. When he's been in the game during passing snaps, I think he's held his own, man. I really do. Now, when you say I would pay him, you're not talking about Kenny Clark money, right? Kenny Clark is on the books next year for $20.3 million against cap. Not paying that. When you say pay TJ Slaton, probably at $3 to $5 million per range. Now he may go out in free agency and get 8 or 9, right? That could happen. I doubt it, but we'll see. Time will tell. All right. So, and I like what Reef said, LVN DTS. I think what he's talking about is, 4 D tackles. I don't know. I apologize. I misunderstood you. I thought you were saying, can LVN play D tackle? I think LVN can, but it's obvious they don't want to do that, right? They would have to put a little weight on him too, right? Beef him up a little bit if he's going to be a every down defensive tackle in this 43 scheme. Because again, when you're kind of running a little bit of hybrid, and last week we played with the Sam on the line and showed a 5-man front, essentially going to a 34 jam. If he's going to be an interior defensive end in that type of situation where if you got 2 backs, it equals 2 gaps, then he's probably not a great 2-gapper, right? But if you're going to just play predominantly 1 gap, I don't want to go back down that conversation. So there's still people that don't understand that, the whole 1 gap, 2 gap thing, and it drives me insane. And there's no reason to even arguing about it. It's mostly media members that I'll just leave it alone. We'll move on. IROC says, Clayton ain't giving no one money. Laughing. Yeah. Man, listen, I'm all about paying the right people, right? And if you can get a deal, again, I'll take every one of these guys back next year. They may not make it out of camp, but I'll take them all back for the right price, right? So it's the other thing is you got the Jordan Love salary cap hit is coming. You got to make a decision on the wide receiver between Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs. Got to make that decision. I just can't justify paying players that are going to sit on the bench. What it comes down to is do you pay them starter money or not, right? That's what I'm saying. You've got to model your roster out. You got to model your organization out and go, okay, I'm willing to pay one defensive tackle, huge money. I disagree that Kenny's the guy getting paid that, right? I think you could do better in free agency. You could have went and got like a Christian Wilkins. And to me, he's shown more than Kenny has. That's just my personal opinion. You'll pay one defensive tackle, huge money. One edge defender, huge money. You'll pay a mock linebacker, huge money. You'll pay one safety, huge money, right? And that's the nucleus of your defense. Notice I didn't mention corner, right? I would much rather have a $7 million Rasul Douglas than a $23 million Jair Alexander. That's just me personally. That's the way I see the cornerback position. Now, on offense, left tackle, huge money. Probably right tackle, huge money. Center, I'm willing to pay huge money. Quarterback obviously goes without saying, huge money. Other than that, I'm not saying minimal contracts, but don't go break the bank at these other positions. That's why I'm trying to justify and get myself in a position to say, okay, how can we keep both Romeo Doubs and Christian Watson without breaking the bank? You go there to them with the checkbook early, right? If you don't do that, they blow up. You're looking at franchise tagging them or paying top receiver money. Now, let's go off precedent now. Forget what I think. Forget what you think. What does Goody in this organization typically do? Now, Goody is cut from the same cloth as Ted Thompson, right? They're willing to give big contracts, that first big contract, re-signing a player they drafted. The second ones they get a little bit stingy on, right? A second contract extension. So you got your rookie deal, your first extension, and then potentially your second extension. Kenny got his second extension. They love Kenny, right? Davante Adams did not get his second extension until he said, I'm done with this organization because they pissed him off and lowballed him. They offered him less than $20 million per, and he said, I'm done. Now, if your argument is that was the right move, Goody made it, I can't argue with that. Look at what Davante's done since he left, right? Still a great player, I think, but playing with lesser quarterbacks than Aaron Rodgers could play a role in it. Would he have been as effective with Jordan? I don't know. It kind of feels like there's not a true number one. Davante's that isolation receiver. Like, hey, we're looking at Davante every play, let him run choice routes, and he's going to get open. I don't like that approach to playing offense personally. But, yeah, what I'm getting at is like with these players that you may or may not extend, you got to go off a precedent. What have we done in the past for giving that second contract extension, right? And it being huge. So, but you're right, iRock. I am cheap in that regard. So that's your defensive line. Let's move on to linebackers. So linebackers, Quay Walker, Edgerrin Cooper, and Tyron Hopper are all under contract next year. They got Aaron Mosby listed as linebacker. I'm not going to acknowledge that right now. Let's just treat him like a defensive end. Oh, I'm sorry. We got to go defensive end. I'm sorry. So to wrap up defensive tackle, essentially what you got coming back is 3, go out and draft 1, or if you find the perfect pick in free agency, the Xavier McKinney type. Guys, listen. Xavier McKinney, tier 2 position of importance, post safety, spend the damn money. They did. They got him for a heck of a deal, in my opinion. Let me show you real quick, and we'll come back to defensive tackle. I don't want to get too sidetracked. Xavier McKinney's cap hit this year, 7.8. Next year, it jumps to 17.6, then $19 million. For arguably the best safety in the league, heck yeah, pay that money. The fact that he's 7.8 this year is impressive to me. So, again, if you can go out and find a defensive tackle that you go, that's our true 3-tech opposite of Rashawn Gary, bang, you're in business, right? But the problem is you've already paid that money to Kenny Clark. So what you're probably going to end up having to do is find a bargain deal in free agency, which with 3-techs, not going to happen. A great 3-tech is not going to be signed in free agency for pennies on the dollar. It's just not going to happen. So what you're going to do is take a swing or two in the draft this year and try to find the next great defensive tackle. Do it in the first round and don't be scared to do it. I'm team trade back out of the first round, but if you're going to draft in the first round, go try to get a true 3-tech. Last year there was a couple players I want to say that were available. Drew, if you're still in here, man, tell me if these guys were available. If you know, if you don't, it's okay. Tell me if these guys were available when we picked Jordan Morgan this year, okay? These were my top defensive linemen. Byron Murphy, Jerzon Newton, T'Vondre Sweat, and then it was Chris Jenkins. Were any of those 4 guys available when we picked this year? Again, those defensive linemen are Byron Murphy, Jerzon Newton, T'Vondre Sweat, and Elton Jenkins. Were any of those defensive linemen available? I'm pretty sure they were. If we were to go back, I could probably pull it up with the mock draft database, but I want to get through this roster thing. Let me know. Because what I'm getting at is I like the Jordan Morgan pick. It's a Goody pick. It's a Packers pick. A left tackle that has versatility that they plan on. They love drafting left. They love drafting tackles and playing them at guard. Right, he fits that. IROC said I think just one. That could have been the case as far as those guys available. So let's move on to defensive end while Drew chases that down for us, putting his ass to work this morning. So defensive end, you've got Rashawn Gary, LVN, right? You've got Kobe Wooden. He's listed as a defensive end, but he plays defensive tackle most of the time. Kingsley Enagbare. Carl Brooks can play a wide 9, but we'll leave him at D tackle. Brenton Cox Jr. So you've got 4 true defensive ends, right? Rashawn Gary, LVN, Kingsley Enagbare, and Brenton Cox Jr. You really don't need to go get an edge defender, in my opinion. You don't. Rashawn Gary's number this year, 11.1. Next year, it jumps to 25.5, then 28 million. That's going to be a steal by the time we get to 2026. Those defensive ends, their money's going through the freaking roof. So let's see. Drew said Sweat was. T'Vondre Sweat was. I don't even want to look at I just said that. I'm going to Google it anyway. Let's look at T'Vondre Sweat. T'Vondre Sweat PFF grade. And again, PFF isn't everything, but let's just see what he's done this year. He may be injured too. I don't even know. Oh, looky there, boys. 72.2. So if you had taken T'Vondre Sweat instead of Jordan Morgan, you got T'Vondre Sweat probably playing better football than both Kenny Clark and Devontae Wyatt. If you just said PFF's everything. Again, it's just one metric. So interesting there, right? Coach Lynn mentions Jonathan Ford. The thing about Jonathan Ford to me, Coach, he's on the practice squad, right? And he would be reset to a future, I would imagine. So you would have rights to him if nobody signs him when that contract voids at the end of the year or what have you. Or you get to a certain point where you can basically they're going to carry over. So I'm just not sold on Jonathan Ford. I mean, he hasn't even been able to crack into the lineup, right? So I just don't – I think that says a lot about what the coaches think, that he's sitting there on the practice squad. And listen, there's 31 other clubs that haven't signed him either. So that's just me personally. But Drew D says not sure about all the other guys, but Sweat was. So, and listen, Sweat, I remember being really, really high on him because they dubbed him as just this nose tackle, but the reality was he was a really good pass rusher too in college. Now he was playing alongside Byron Murphy, I believe, if I remember correctly. So it was like, which came first, the chicken or the egg, right? Who was the better defensive tackle that made the other one better? I don't know, but that's your defensive line room. Linebacker, Quay Walker, Edgerrin Cooper, and Tyron Hopper, your only 3 backers coming back. Now, are you going to re-sign Eric Wilson and McDuffie? We talked about that. I think we would all agree we'd like to have both those guys back at the right price. But let's say they do go in free agency and they don't sign with the Packers, then you need to go out and draft at least 1, maybe 2 outside linebackers, right? And again, outside linebackers being a stack backer, not an edge hybrid type, right? You want those guys to be a true stack backer. Really, it's a good idea to go looking at inside linebackers in college for an NFL outside linebacker, in my opinion, if you're going to play a 4-3 defense. So there we go. Here we go. Newton went to Washington in the 2nd. Did he really? Jerzon Newton. I wonder what he's done this year. Jerzon Newton was my 2nd best defensive lineman. If we had taken him instead of Jordan Morgan, you would have heard a loud redneck celebration from the great state of Tennessee. I promise you. Let's see what he's done this year. He may be hurt too. Jerzon Newton PFF. 46.6. Boy, Cole Clayton would be y'all be roasting Clayton right now, wouldn't you? Again, it's not my personal opinion of the players, but it's the formula I use to create a draft board. But sounds like, again, man, that's the draft, right? Hit and miss, hit and miss. What's crazy is I seen him as a slam dunk top 20 pick. He fell to the second, and he's struggling. Shows you what I know, right? Go ahead and unsub to the channel if you like. So that's linebacker. We got, like I said, Aaron Mosby. That's a defensive end, in my opinion. So you're going to have space if Eric Wilson and McDuffie walk. You're going to have space to go draft one or two guys there. All right, let's move on to the secondary. Let's focus on cornerback first. Cornerback, you've got Jair Alexander coming back. You got Keyshawn Nixon coming back. Eric Stokes is going to be a free agent. So right now it's Jair and Keyshawn Nixon. Those are your two starting corners. They're both under contract for next year, right? Then it would be Carrington Valentine. And then on the practice squad, Kalen King. Again, it's kind of like the Jonathan Ford talk, like we were just talking about with Coach Lynn. Kalen King was that good, he'd be on a roster somewhere, right? He fell to the 7th. We drafted him. He didn't make the 53, or maybe he did initially, but he's on the 53 now. He's on the practice squad. It is what it is. But he will be on the roster next year, though, right? They'll get him back on futures and potentially put him back on the practice squad. So returning at corner, you've got 1, 2, 3. It looks like 4. Kamal Haddon will return 2 on the future, I'm sure. So that would be 5, but you've got space there. You need to probably take a swing in the draft, a swing or two in the draft to try to find a corner and upgrade, right? Keyshawn Nixon, I think, has held his own. Now, listen, his passer rating when targeted is bad. I think he brings value in stopping the run. There's no doubt about that. You've seen the hustle play where he forced the fumble. We've seen him sack the quarterback on quarterback rollouts because he's sitting in that curl flat zone sometimes, depending on the play call when he was in the slot. Now, if you play cloud, to me, he is that cloud corner. And what I mean by that is he's that dude that when you call a cover 3 cloud, one side of the field, that corner is actually playing the curl flat. Let me show you what I mean by cloud. I think I got it up here still. Yeah, here we go. So with cloud, let me drop that comment down. When you're playing cloud, notice the corner is covering the curl flat because the safety's covering deep third over the top. That's the far right diagram there, okay? So the linebacker inside is in a hook curl, a mid-zone, if you will. The cornerback is in curl flat. Keyshawn in a curl flat all day long. Now, him as a deep third, like if you're going to go to a sky or a buzz where he's got to cover deep, I struggle with that, man. I struggle with that bad. I do. So that's kind of what you got with Key. You can't play cloud every play. Play cloud every play, you're going to get your lunch eat, right? That's going to happen. So that's kind of how I see Keyshawn. I think he's done a good job. I do. And again, the passer rating when targeted would not suggest that. The PFF grade isn't great, although if you do a minimum 20% snaps on PFF, I want to say he grades out in the 60s. So in the 60s as far as ranking. So that would suggest he's a solid number 2 corner, right, from a PFF grade standpoint, but still got a lot of stuff to work on there. Safety room. Returning, obviously, Xavier McKinney, Javon Bullard, Evan Williams. Taking multiple swings at a position, guys, put you in a great position. If you hit on one and you got depth of the future on a rookie contract, you're sitting go. Evan Williams is one of the best safeties in the game. We would all agree, right? His cap hit next year is $1.1 million. After that, it's $1.2 million. Like, think about that. Let's see if we can go a little bit further. I don't know if I can get that pull up. Here we go. Yeah. And then it jumps to $1.3 million. You got him. That rookie contract is absolute gold, man. Gold. And they traded up for him, and you know why now. Same thing with Javon Bullard, 1.2, 1.5. So you're good at safety. Katano Ladapo, even less of a cap hit. No reason to address safety this year, unless you just see a special teams player that you got to have, right? So you're feeling good about safety. That's it, guys. Like, what are the biggest holes here? You know, you've already made your decision on defensive tackle, so you're going to have to swing in the draft if you're going to try to find a stud, right? That's kind of a hole. Some of the other positions we hit on, like tight end, I feel good about the tight end room. I feel good about the receiver room. I feel good about the running back room. Josh Jacobs, Emmanuel Wilson, and Chris Brooks. Feel great about that, right? Quarterback, you're set. You got Jordan Love, you got Malik Willis, one of the better performing backup quarterbacks. For some reason, Jordan gets banged up. I feel good about Malik Willis and Matt LaFleur putting their heads together and coming up with a diabolical game plan to just annihilate a defense. Corner and defensive tackle is like the spot that I keep going, yep, that's it right there. And linebacker, you know. Try to find your next starting linebacker if you don't plan on extending Quay after next year, but you really don't have to worry about that right now. So this roster's in a good spot. And that's the reason I want to do this, because as we're going through the season, we're doing 2 shows a day, and in this case, 2 episodes on one show in the morning. We have time for at least one episode to kind of break this stuff down, right, and take a look. But this was a lot of fun, man. Appreciate everybody in the chat. You guys kept it going. Thank y'all so much for helping me gather information. That's again, this is why we call it. It's Packers Total Access, but the channel Packer Fan Total Access. It's Packer fans coming together and talking ball, man. Love it. This has been an absolute blast. So we'll be back tonight, 7 p.m. Central. I'm going to go hit town here with the wife and go out and do a little Christmas shopping and grab some lunch and all that. But we will be back tonight, 7 p.m. Central, to do Chalk Talk, 15 of the top plays. In my opinion, the most important plays from the big win over the Dolphins there Thanksgiving night. So that being said, thanks everybody. For those of you listening on the pod, thank you for making us a part of your day. Let's go out and be the change we want to see in the world. And go Pack, go.